Krishna, I need some practice. There's different ways to chant Hare Krishna. One is on beads, and you hear yourself chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And the other is chanting so that the sound goes out. And it's usually done, it can be responsive. In other words, if there's other people there, you're chanting, and then they respond with the mantra, and then like that, back and forth. But even if there's like nobody to respond, chanting out loud. Jai Shri Prabhupada, Jai Tulsi Devi, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. I'm going to read a little something from the Ramayana. I want to practice a little bit first. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Rajagopalachari C, Saraswati Sriman, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Vanchikavata Rubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvyaya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. This is chapter 33. And this is a condensed version of the Ramayana, rendered into English from the Tamil translation of Valmiki's Sanskrit Ramayana. It reads like a play script. It's very quick reading. You get all the action. So up to this point, Ram, Sita, and Lakshman have been living very peacefully in the forest for over 10 years to fulfill their 14-year exile. Bharat is ruling Ayodhya as a proxy for Ram, and he's not living in Ayodhya. He's living very austerely, like an ascetic, at Nandagram, which is some distance from Ayodhya. And by ministers and messengers coming back and forth, he's seeing that Ayodhya is not without a king. But he's not the king. He's the proxy for Ram, who is the king, but is in exile. So everything's been going along fine, but now the Rakshasas are appearing. One Rakshasa appeared and tried to carry Sita off. Rama and Lakshman killed him, and he was released from a curse that had been put on him. He was actually a Gandharva that received a benediction from Lord Brahma that he couldn't be killed. But the benediction was that he couldn't be killed in that Rakshasa form, which just prolonged the curse unbearably. But when Lord Ramachandra stepped on him, by the touch of the Lord, he was released from the curse. And then he was killed, or that Rakshasa body was killed, and a beautiful Gandharva was released, and he returned to the heavenly planets. That was the first Rakshasa. Then Surpanaka, the king of the Rakshasas' sister, Ravana's sister, comes across Ram and Lakshman and Sita, and she's overwhelmed with lust for Ram. So she approaches him like that, rather inappropriately, with the determination to get Sita out of the picture. But how, Sita Ram, it's eternal form of the Lord, Sita Ram, Radha Krishna. She wants to take the place of Sita. She's very, very ugly. But she disguises herself as a beautiful woman and tries to steal Ram and get rid of Sita so that they can frolic in the forest together, killing and eating animals and killing and eating sages, which is the Rakshasas. They would kill. The sages were meditating in the forest, the rishis. The Rakshasas would come and attack them and eat them raw, just devour them. Pretty bad. They didn't even cook. They just, never mind. Hare Krishna. Pretty bad. So here, Surpanaka has gone to her brothers and complained. To get rid of her, Lakshman cut her nose off. She went running into the forest. And she's gone to all the Rakshasas, their army, and the leaders of their armies. And she's the sister of the king of the Rakshasas. And she's going to stir everything up here. But this just fits because this was actually the reason for the appearance of Lord Ramachandra, was to destroy the Rakshasas. Because not only were they causing problems in the forest of Dandakaranya, where the rishis were meditating, but they were disturbing the demigods also. So they were a big disturbance for universal affairs. So Lord Ramachandra, so this is really the reason for his appearance, is to rid the world of these Rakshasas. So this is chapter 33. Khara and his army. Accompanied by the 14 generals of Khara, he's Rakshasa, Surpanaka came back to Ram's ashram, determined to avenge herself and drink the blood of the princes. If I can't have you for my pleasure and enjoyment, then I will eat you for my dinner. Pointing to the two young men, she told her escort, "Look, there stand the men who insulted and mutilated me. Slay them immediately. Rama understood the situation at once and told Lakshman, take care of Sita for a while I deal with these fellows. Saying that, he took up his bow. Following the prevailing rules of war, Ram announced himself to Khara's generals and said, tell us the reason that you come here. Know that we are here in the forest at the bidding of the rishis for the purpose of destroying their enemies. If you wish to escape with life, leave us alone. Yeah, there's a code of ethics where the Kshatriya will not kill someone who hasn't attacked them. So he said, if you wish to escape with life, leave us alone. And if you attack us, we'll have to kill you, but we won't bother you otherwise. But the Rakshasas wanted not peace, they wanted war, and the battle began. It did not take long for Ram's arrows to annihilate the Rakshasa generals. Once again, lamenting loudly, Surpanaka went to Khara. The destruction of the powerful detachment he had sent was inconceivable. He could not believe it. He sought to soothe his disturbed sister with soft words. I have sent warriors, unconquerable, each one like Yama. They must have by now fulfilled their mission. Why do you weep? Why need you bewail while I'm here? Surpanaka rose, wiping the tears from her eyes, said, true, you sent your 14 warriors with me, but the 14 now lie stiff and cold in death, slain by Ram, whose skill with weapons baffles description. If you have a spark of pride in you, start at once, fight with Ram, and save the Rakshasa race. If you do not, the destruction of our people is certain. But if you are afraid, tell me so, and I shall understand. These young men who have entered your satrapi are determined to destroy your race, unless you first meet and destroy them. These words, spoken by his sister in a loud voice before all his courtiers, pierced Khara's heart. Why do you speak thus terrified by a puny human being? Hold yourself in patience for a moment, and you will have his blood to drink. So saying, Khara rose. Do not go alone, she said. Take your army with you. Khara gave orders accordingly. A great army, fully armed, went in advance under the leadership of Dushana. Behind the army, Khara proceeded majestically in a chariot. Behind the army. Usually a king goes before the army, but Khara went behind the army. On the way he met with many bad omens which affected the spirits of his host. He laughed and reassured his army, saying, Never have I been so far defeated in battle. Do not mind these portents. We shall soon crush these 2 little men and return in triumph. The army took heart at these bold words of their leader. Hearing the tumultuous roar of the approaching army, Ram and Lakshman prepared for the battle. Ram told Lakshman, Do you see the signs? It is certain that the Rakshasas of Janastan are coming here to their death. I see in your face the glory of the victory that awaits us. Arm yourself. Take Sita with you to a cave in the hill and look after her. I shall encounter the Rakshasa hordes and destroy them. Go at once. I do not require any help. Saying this, Ram put on his armor and strung his bow. Lakshman did as Ram bade and took Sita to a mountain cave. A great battle was to follow, so the Devas and Gandharvas hovered in the heavens to watch the fight. They uttered benedictions and prayed for Ram's victory. The rishis had misgivings. How was Ram standing single to meet and quell this huge army? As Ram stood there, bow in hand, the radiance of his face was like that of Rudra himself when he bent his great bow, Pinaka. The Rakshasa force advanced in proud array. with drums and trumpets and the clanking pageantry of war, filling the quarters with clamor and causing the denizens of the forest to stampede in all directions. Ram stood holding his bow with his hand on the string. Like great black clouds disturbing the sun, the Rakshasa hordes surrounded him. The battle began. But while even the Devas wondered how he could withstand the yelling masses that rushed on him, a constant stream of deadly arrows sped from his bow, before which the Rakshasa ranks withered and fell like moths before a blazing fire. Dushana himself now stood in front of Ram. Ram bent his bow and sent his shafts in all directions in an unceasing stream, like rays from the sun, and with the speed of light, arrows shot out from the spot where Ram stood, spreading out in all directions, and brought down warriors, chariots, elephants, and horses. The shafts pierced the bodies of the Rakshasas and came out, covered with their blood shining like fire. The army was utterly destroyed, and Ram stood still like Shiva at the end of time. Dushana came again with another great army. For a while he seemed indomitable, but soon Ram's arrows laid low his chariot, drivers, and horses. He jumped down, sprang towards Ram. Ram's arrows, however, severed his arms from his trunk, and the monster fell dead on the ground like a huge elephant. Other Rakshasas who saw Dushana falling rushed against Ram and were also slain by the arrows that sped from his Kodanda bow. In this way, the whole army of Khara was destroyed. It had come roaring like an ocean, and now it lay still as a mass of corpses and severed limbs and derelict weapons and broken chariots. Only Khara and Trisiras remained. As Khara rushed forward to meet Ram, Trisiras stopped him, saying, "I shall go first and kill Ram, or else I shall be killed. After I am dead, you may meet him." The three-headed Rakshasa, mounted on his chariot, attacked Ram with his arrows. Ram met them with arrows that hissed like deadly serpents. At last, Trisiras collapsed and fell, spitting blood. His followers fled like deer. Khara, seeing this, "Hold!" to the fugitives, and directed his chariot against Ram. His confident pride was gone, but he fought manfully. The shafts sent by the two warriors covered the sky. Khara stood like Yama in his chariot, sending his stream of arrows. For an instant, Ram leaned on his bow. In that interval, Ram's armor was pierced by Khara's arrows and showed the prince's body shining like the sun. Ram now took up the bow of Vishnu and laid low Khara's chariot and cut his bow in twain. Khara then took his mace and approached Ram. The Devas and Rishis watching the battle became anxious and renewed their benedictions. "You have been a terror and a plague to mankind," exclaimed Ram. "Strength of body is no protection to an evildoer. You have persecuted and killed Rishis, engaged in penance in the forest. You now receive the punishment due for the sins of yours. The spirits of the Rishis whose flesh you fed on are now witnessing your punishment from their aerial chariots. I have come to the Dandaka forest to destroy wicked Rakshasas. My arrows will pierce the bodies of all your kinsfolk. Your head will soon roll on the ground like a ripe fruit." "Human worm," exclaimed Khara, "son of Dasara, have done with boasting. You're proud because you have killed a few common Rakshasas. A hero boasts not as you do. Only a Kshatriya banished by his people can talk boasting like this. You have shown you can brag. Let us see now if you can fight. Your words have blazed up like burning straw with little heat of life. Where I stand, mace in hand, like Yama, to take your life. Evening approaches. Be prepared to lose your life. I am here to avenge the death of these fellows whom you have killed." So saying, he whirled his mace and hurled it at Ram. The mace was split by Ram's arrows into splinters, which fell harmless on the ground. "Have you finished speaking, Rakshasa? Now you shall die. The forest will be safe hereafter, and the rishis will live in peace," said Ram. Even while Ram was speaking, Khara pulled out by its roots a huge tree. Gnashing his teeth, threw it at Ram. But this too Ram split by his arrows. And fearing further delay, he aimed deadly darts at Khara. The wounded Rakshasa sprang on Ram, intending close combat with him. But the latter avoided contact by stepping back and laid him dead with a shaft that clove his breast. The Devas showered flowers from high and cried in joy, "Ram has killed the sinful Rakshasa. Men can live in peace in the Dandaka forest hereafter." Within an hour, Ram had destroyed Khara, Dushana, Trisaras, and their whole army. Indeed, he is a hero. Sita and Lakshman returned from the cave. Lakshman embraced Ram and rejoiced that single-handed he had fulfilled the promise of safety he had given to the rishis. How did Ram all alone perform these feats? If one observes a cow guarding her calf and scattering a whole crowd of men, one can realize the power of love. Love is a supreme quality which, according to occasion, manifests itself in diverse heroic forms, such as valor and self-sacrifice, just like gold, which can be changed for silver, or goods for other things of value. This is the translator with his little interjection. When God assumes a human form and is engaged in fulfilling his promise to save the helpless, his limitless power comes into play. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. There was another example of how this is. It was back here a little further. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Yeah. Like great black clouds disturbing the sun. So the Rakshasa army attacks was like clouds trying to disturb the sun. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Just clouds. So chapter 34, called The Path of Ruin. Akampana, one of the few Rakshasas who survived the great slaughter at Panchavati, fled to Lanka and seeking audience of Ram said, so Ravana wasn't in Dandaka forest, he was in Sri Lanka, which is off the coast of the southern tip of India. But these Rakshasas were hanging out in the Dandaka forest, killing and eating animals, people, causing big problems. But Ravana was in Sri Lanka. So this Akampana, who survived the slaughter, went to Lanka and says to the audience of Ravana, the king of the Rakshasas, almost all our people who occupied Janastan are dead, and Janastan is now an empty ruin. I alone have managed to escape with life. Ravana was furious with anger. He stared and violently shouted, "Who destroyed my lovely Janastan? Was it Yama or Agni or Vishnu? I shall deal death to the god of death. I shall burn up both the god of fire and the sun. I shall strangle and suffocate the god of wind. Tell me, who was it that destroyed Janastan and killed my men heedlessly that I am here to avenge? Speak out at once." it was ever dangerous to carry unpleasant news to tyrants. Akampana was frightened by the king's rage and said, "I shall speak if you give me protection." He then told his tale. Ram, son of Dasarath, a young warrior, lion-like in fierce valor, a hero who has already acquired fame among men, fought with Khara, Dushana, and Panchavati and destroyed them. The Rakshasa king hissed like a cobra and said, "What are you talking about? How did this happen? Did Indra and the divine hosts come down to earth and fight on Ram's side?" Akampana answered, "No such thing happened, great king. Alone did Ram stand against our whole army and its commanders and destroyed them all. And Khara and Dushana too were slain. The deadly arrows issuing from Ram's bow like five-headed serpents pursued the Rakshasas wherever they went and destroyed them." And he went on to describe at length Ram's skill and speed in the use of his weapons. And so Ravana learned that Dasarath's son Ram, with his younger brother Lakshman, was at Panchavati, and that he alone, without even his brother's aid, had done it all, and that no gods had come to their aid. "Well," said Ram, "I do not understand this, but I shall start at once. I shall destroy these little worms of men in return." And he rose. "Hear me, great king, before you go," said Akampana, and explained once again Ram's strength and courage. "Listen to me. No one can fight with Ram and conquer him. When I say no one, I mean no one. Not even you can do it, because you have promised me protection. I dare thus to tell you the plain truth. There is only one way of killing him. His wife is with him. The whole earth holds not her equal in beauty. If you contrive to carry her off, separation from her will kill Ram. So great is his love for her. Consider how you can do this. Do not think of battle with him." When he heard of Sita's beauty, the Rakshasa desire was kindled. He began to think that the defeat of Khara and his hosts was indeed a fortunate event that brought him an opportunity for gaining one more beautiful queen and wife. He welcomed Akampana's advice and said, "Tomorrow morning I shall go. I think your plan is good." Accordingly, Ravana set out in his mule-yoked flying chariot, which gleamed like the moon among the clouds as it sped fast in the air. He went straight to Maricha's dwelling. Maricha duly welcomed his king and inquired what urgent necessity brought him there. Ravana answered, "Hear me, Maricha. You and you alone can help me. Janistan has been destroyed, and so too the whole army I had stationed there. All this is the work of Ram, son of Dasarath. Isn't it amazing? To avenge myself, I am resolved to carry off his wife. In this I need your advice and help." Maricha, whose experience of Ram's prowess had seared into his soul, was horrified and tried to dissuade Ravana from his mad enterprise. "What plan is this? Some enemy determined to destroy you, but pretending to be your friend, has given you this plan of carrying off Sita. Whoever gave you this advice wishes the end of the Rakshasa race. It is like advising you to put your hand in the mouth of a sleeping cobra and pull out its fangs. Haven't you a happy home and devoted wives? Return to them, enjoy your life and prosperity. To hanker after Ram's wife is the highway to disgrace and destruction and the annihilation of the Rakshasa race." 10-headed Ravana went back to Lanka, for Maricha's counsel appeared right to him. Ravana must have then remembered the omission in the series of boons he had secured. He had obtained immunity from the attacks of all beings except men. Ram's shafts had conquered and killed the whole army with Khara, Trisiras, Dushan, and other mighty warriors. Thinking of all this, Ravana accepted Maricha's advice. But fate would not let him be. Ravana was seated on his throne with his counselors around him. Majesty shone on his face like a sacrificial flame fed with ghee, and his mighty body showed the scars of many wounds received in victorious battles against gods, asuras, and others. His strength and courage were limitless, so was his adharma. He had no equal in persecuting devas, spoiling sacrifices, and carrying away women. The hosts of devas and asuras were mortally afraid of him. He was a terror to all creatures. Enjoying wealth and varied pleasures, freed from the fear of death, the ruler of Lanka knew no master or rival and feared neither God nor sin. With his 10 heads, large eyes, and huge limbs, his figure was terrible, but it also possessed the marks of royalty. Gorgeously dressed and bejeweled as he sat on his throne, surrounded by his ministers in the midst of the splendor of the despoiled world, there suddenly appeared before him, like the vision of the doomed-to-be, his sister, Supanaka, bleeding and mutilated, a shape of pain and sorrow and shame. While all looked at her with horror-struck eyes in stunned silence, her anguish broke out in burning words. "What a fool you are! Sunk in sensual pleasures and arrogantly secure in sovereignty, you're not awake to the deadly danger that threatens your existence at your very door. Surely that king who is drunk with self-importance and dead to all portents that threaten his state is doomed to shame and destruction. No object is of less account or more contemptible than a ruler who falls through his own remises. Know you not that your brothers, Khara, Dushana, and Trisharas, and your gallant army of 14,000 fierce Rakshasas have been exterminated by Ram, a mere man, and that your outpost at Janastan has been destroyed. One moment I saw a single warrior stand proud in the glittering pageantry of war, and the next they lay dead, slain by that man's arrows, strewing the ground like ripe crops devastated by a terrible hailstorm. And you see me, your own sister, disgraced, mutilated, and heartbroken. Have you no thoughts of vengeance? You, a hero, a brother, a king." Stung by her contempt, and heart-struck by her suffering and sorrow, Ravana said, "Be sure, you shall have vengeance. But this Ram, who is he? What sort of man is he? What are his weapons? How does he fight? What seeks he in Dandaka forest? And how happened it that you were so cruelly mutilated?" She gave a description of the brothers and Sita, dwelling on the virile beauty and powers of the brothers, probably with a view to provoke the envious jealousy of the Rakshasa. And growing enthusiastically eloquent about the superlative loveliness of Sita, she said, "I have no words to describe her perfections. I have never seen such sublime beauty in any created thing, be it Gandharva, Kinnara, a daughter of man. And now I will tell you why this ghastly outrage was perpetrated on me. On seeing this Sita, I felt that none but you deserved her, and that she was fully worthy to share your bed. And out of my love for you, I tried to carry her off for you." Lakshman, who was standing by, prevented it, and sprung on me, disfigured and disgraced me thus. "For your sake, all this I have suffered." We know that's not true. She was trying to get rid of Sita so she could enjoy it with Ramachandra, but to get her brother all riled up. And everybody's listening. She's in front of everybody. They're all assembled. So she's put him in an awkward spot. "For your sake, all this I have suffered. If you wish to avenge this insult, protect the honor of the race, rise and go at once. Apart from revenge for the insult I have suffered, secure for yourself a wife worthy of you. If you capture her and disgrace Ram, the spirits of the warriors who were slain in Dandaka would be satisfied. I too shall feel that some amends have been made for the dishonor done to me. Do you not know your own strength? You can easily secure Sita and make her your own. And can you remain indifferent to the insult to your race? Khara and Dushana lie dead in Janistan because they dared oppose Ram. Think of all this and do what is right. Save, oh save, the honor of our race. Listening to these words of his sister and her praise of Sita's beauty, Ravana dissolved the council and retired to muse alone. He had to think and think again, because he remembered what Maricha had told him. He turned in his mind the pros and cons, and finally, coming to a decision, ordered a chariot to be kept ready in secrecy. It was ready, his golden chariot drawn by mules bearing demon faces. Mounting it, he passed over sea and land and cities. As he looked from his magic chariot at the sights of the summer season down below, his passion grew stronger. He reached Maricha's ashram and met Maricha, who, with matted hair and bark garments, lived the life of an ascetic. Seeing his king and kinsman, Maricha welcomed Ravana duly and said, "Why have you come all this way a second time and unannounced?" Ravana, skillful in his speech, began, "I'm in great trouble, from which only you can save me. I beg for your help. Do you know how my brothers, under my orders, ruled Janistan, and how they and their warriors knew no opposition all these years? But now, this man, Ram, has killed them and their whole army. Without a chariot and standing on the ground, his arrows have pierced to death all our kinsmen. Today, in the Dandaka forest, rid of Rakshasas, the rishis live fearless lives. This Ram is a worthless prince banished by his father, no doubt for some crime. He has been wandering in the forest alone with his wife, Sita. This fellow, dressed like an ascetic but enjoying sense pleasures, this renegade from Dharma, proud of his strength and for no other reason, has mutilated the face of my sister and insulted our race. My sister, who has suffered this pain and shame, had come and complained to me. If, with all this, I sit still and do nothing, would I still be a king? To avenge myself, I have decided to carry off Ram's wife from the Dandaka forest. To disgrace and punish this Ram is a duty I owe to my race, and for this I need your help. With you to help me, I have no fear. In courage, strength, skill, and magic powers, none on earth can equal you. That is why I have come to you. You cannot refuse me. I will tell you how you can help me. You should turn yourself into a golden deer. A golden deer with silver spots, casting a spell on all eyes. In that shape, romp in front of Sita near Ram's ashram. True to the character of women, she will insist on Ram and Lakshman pursuing and capturing you for her. When they are thus engaged and she is left alone, I shall easily carry her off. Sita is a most beautiful woman. Ram, losing such a wife, is sure to languish in sorrow and lose his manly spirit. It will then be easy to kill him and avenge ourselves. Maricha stared at Ravana. His face became pale, his mouth grew parched. He was frightened by Ravana's plan. With his experience of Ram's prowess and his own wisdom born of penance, Maricha saw what was going to happen. He knew that Ravana's sinful purpose had not the ghost of a chance of success. It was clear to him that the noose of fate was around Ravana's neck, dragging him to inevitable ruin. He had spoken, no doubt, of the honor of the Rakshasas, of the duties of kingship, and of the insult to Sripanaka. But he was really impelled by a lustful desire to possess Sita. All this Maricha saw. So there's going to be a little interjection here. We should analyze Surpanaka's motives too. She had suffered because of her own uncontrollable carnal desire. Though it was Lakshman who mutilated her, she was not so angry with him as with Sita, who stood between her and her desire, and whose beauty and virtue she hated as darkness hates light. The one desire that now burned in her heart was to avenge herself by bringing disgrace on Sita. In order to use Ravana for this purpose, she described Sita in such glowing terms to him and kindled his lawless passion. The rest of her talk was ancillary to her main purpose. Reference to the honor of the race, the security of his empire, the slaying of his kinsmen, and so on, was only to serve her main purpose, which was to rouse Ravana's lust and make him desire Sita, and he was caught in the snare. So the next chapter is about this golden deer and what happens. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Shri Ram, Jai Jai Ram, Shri Ram, Jai Jai Ram.